And ultimately what happens is this encounter leads to Hannah's pivotal aha moment when the stripper removes her top. At that point, the scene strips into this surreal fantasy sequence, is I guess how I'll put it, where the camera circles around Hannah and the stripper, and the two of them are spinning in the opposite direction.
Hi, and welcome back to StudioBinder Academy. I'm Brandon. Today we're speaking with DP Bradford Lipson, who's lensed shows like Wilfred and In the Dark, as well as features such as The Wedding Ringer and Hulu's recent release, Prom Dates. Bradford, thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, my pleasure. Happy to be here.
Now, to start off with, we like to get everyone's backstory. Could you tell us what inspired you to become a filmmaker? Okay,
so my backstory is kind of an interesting one because it actually starts when I was a child and I was really into magic.
And, okay.
Yeah, so it's kind of a crazy thing, and it's interesting how this all weaves together. So bear with me. So basically, what happened is when I was a kid, I really got into magic, and by the age of 13, I was performing professionally at a Shakey's Pizza Parlor. I was doing like close-up magic and stage magic and balloon animals. And the reason why this kind of is important is because through magic, I learned how to tell stories. Because when you're performing, you're telling stories. And then there's the technical side of it, which is you have to have a really good awareness of lighting and what the lighting is around you and where you're performing, because there's a variety of things going on and that you want to hide. And then there's also optical illusions. A lot of the tricks you're doing employ optical illusions. So you become really aware of how that all works. Then in junior high, I also became fascinated with photography, and I learned how to choose a darkroom and develop photos. And I thought this was really magical as well, because I think that even though I know it's a chemical and it's a chemistry and scientific thing, there's a magic to it. You know, when you put the negative into the, you spool it up and put it into the canister and it comes out. I think that's like really a fascinating and wonderful thing. So I started to kind of, at early stages, you can see it kind of started to come together in that way. Then in high school, I gravitated, of course, towards drama, because why wouldn't I? Because I was performing. But this incredible satellite school had just opened. This was in Denver, Colorado, and it had this fantastic arts, science, and vocational program at this particular school. It was state of the art, really. And I noticed they had a film course, and it was taught by a retired filmmaker by the name of Bob Getty. He was a documentary filmmaker. So it wasn't taught by just a regular school teacher. This was taught by somebody who actually was out making documentaries, and he wrote the course. And it was just, I was like, okay, I want to see what this is about. And what I realized when I started working in going to the classes and learning about it is that film and magic are one and the same in regards to the actual film rolling through a camera, 24 frames a second, tricking your eye. It's just an optical illusion. And so that was kind of like an aha moment for me. And also just tricking the camera with depth and various other things. I was like really fascinated by this. I kind of fell in love with the whole process. I shot and directed a short film. I edited on Moviola, had to sync up the magnetic tape sound with the images. It was quite the process. And I like immediately was enthralled with it. I also began to realize the power of when you shoot and edit something and how you shoot and edit, you can change how a story is perceived. And I was really fascinated by that.
I always love this part of the interview because everyone's story is so different. And, you know, seeing it so in yourself so young, that's such an amazing thing. And for it to start with magic, I know they call it movie magic for a reason, I'm sure.
Exactly.
Now, was there anything that drew you to cinematography specifically?
Yes, because so in this class, we had a CP16 camera, which was state of the art back in those days. We shot a lot of 16 millimeter film. And I think the part that both intrigued me and mystified me the most was lighting. I never had even thought twice when I watched all, television when I was a kid and go to the movies and the James Bond films and all this stuff. Like, I never really thought about it. But then I became like really aware of, wow, they're lighting all this. How are they doing it? And so I really started paying close attention to lighting in movies at that point. And I really wanted to know how they did it. I wasn't really aware of everything cinematography encompasses, but I definitely felt that I had a passion for it and I wanted to learn more about it. So that's where it started.
Now, as far as your career path, you started as a gaffer, is that correct?
That is correct. Yes.
Okay. And then could you kind of walk us through that path? Did you find it difficult to make the transition from from gaffer to director of photography?
Not at all. But do you want to hear kind of how I even got into gaffing or?
Oh, absolutely.
So, because it's kind of the story is kind of interesting because I was in Denver, Colorado, as I said, and really all there was kind of commercial production houses, and again, not really knowing much about like what cinematography is and how it all goes together. I started calling some of these production houses and just trying to talk to people. And finally, I got somebody on the phone who asked me, what is it I'm interested in? He said, kid, what are you interested in? And I said, cinematography. And he said, well, then learn lighting. You got to be a gaffer. That's how you got to do it. So I started sending out my meager little resume to try to get production assisting jobs. And I sent them to a variety of production companies there. And lo and behold, I get a call from one of the production houses. And while this person is talking to me about coming in as a PA, there happened to be a gaffer by the name of Ken Segren, who owned a lighting company called Lighting Services, Inc. And he was listening to the phone call. He was there at the production company working with them for something else. And he saw my resume, hears this conversation, grabs the phone and says, hey, you're interested in lighting? Be in my house at 2:00. Wear really bad clothing. You're going to be working hard. Here's my address. I show up at his place. This was like the early stages of his company, ran it out of his backyard. My first day in the business, what was I doing? I was sanding apple boxes. I didn't even know what they were for, but I sanded those apple boxes till I think 10:00 p.m. So basically, he saw that I was enthused, and Ken offered me a job and said, be at my house tomorrow at 6 a.m. I show up the next day, his 10-ton truck, which was this beautiful Grip electric truck that was super pristine. I didn't know what anything in this truck was, but I was just like enthralled with it. His truck is warming up. I jump in. I'm like, where are we going? Just come on, you're going with me. You show up my second day in the business. I'm on a national commercial, and he's like, stay in the truck and you hand the guys whatever it is they're asking for. And that was kind of my early stages of beginning to learn the equipment, how to what it all is.
I would like to dive into, gaffing a little bit more. For those who may not know, could you explain what a gaffer is and what their duties are?
Sure. So I think simply put, a gaffer is really a chief lighting tech. He's the chief lighting technician. He runs the set. He's head of the electric department. The role involves management, technical, and creative capabilities, basically. I think it requires leading a team of lighting technicians to fulfill the cinematographer's vision. That's kind of the best way to put it.
And who do you work most closely with? And what are the kind of collaborations with the other departments look like?
So I think for me, it would clearly be the grip department. The key grip and the grips are your closest allies because you're really working collectively day in and day out to make lighting happen. I think you really have to have a strong relationship with these guys. You're sharing information, you're brainstorming on rigs that you're designing together. You're discussing constant changes. You're in constant communication. I think you have to have each other's back. I think so. I think the grip department would be the number one people you're going to have a close relationship with. I think secondly, it would be the camera department, and especially the operators, because I think you need to be able to communicate with them in a clear and concise way when you're lighting, because you want to make sure that when you're placing lights, they're being placed out of frame. The worst thing in the world is like when you go to set up a light and the grips take 15 minutes to build a whole bunch of stuff around it, and the operator was really busy working like maybe with the dolly grip on something else and dealing with their problems. And then he looks over and says, oh my God, let me see. Oh, that's all in the shot. You got to move it. And it's like, you just wasted a lot of time. So I think working with the camera operators is hugely important as well.
Excellent. Now, kind of along those lines, we like to always ask, creative problem solving, because, on set, some things just suddenly don't work correctly or how you plan them. As a gaffer, do you have any experiences that you might be able to share of any creative problem solving that you had to come up with on the dime?
Yes, many times. And I could probably think of so many stories that involve actual lighting scenarios, but one really interesting story stands out in my mind where we were on location. I had lit the set, and the particular project we were doing was of such that we couldn't lose any time. Like we literally had to shoot this thing. It was all like almost shooting live. And as we're shooting the camera, as we're shooting, all the lights begin to flicker. So the Jenny operator is like, we got to shut down. So I immediately radio my best boy, call the rental house, let's get another Jenny on the way. And I run outside to just see what was going on. And I noticed that there was this industrial generator that parked maybe about 35, 40 feet away that was running these big production vehicles. And so I ran over to that Jenny operator and asked him what the amperage was and how much they were using. And I was like, I think we could run our set on that generator. So I run back to the generator, to our production generator. I pull out our cables. I clip off the pins, shave them down. I have my guys helping me. We pull the cable over, put it into these big bus bars and bolt them in, and we were up and running. I think we lost maybe 15 minutes. And of course, during that time, my best boy had called in a new generator. And so we stayed on this industrial generator till lunch. And then at lunch, we went back to our generator and everything was great. So that's a great example of like having to solve a problem and be creative in a different sense.
Wow, that's amazing. Yeah, I know how stressful it can be in the moment. And like you said, you didn't have the time to waste. But you did mention best boy. Could you kind of explain what their duties are?
Sure. So a best boy is, I would say, an assistant manager. It's like if the gaffer's a manager, the best boy is an assistant manager. And the main two areas that the best boy would be in charge of is labor and equipment. So making sure that we have the appropriate amount of labor on any given day to accommodate whatever we're shooting, and whatever day playing equipment is going to come in for that day to make sure it's ordered and PO'd and arrives and checked in, as well as working behind us when we're done with something, that equipment gets returned. And that's I think really the main two duties of the best boy.
Now, moving on to your work as a director of photography, how would you say your work as a gaffer kind of informed your cinematography?
I think, so this is a great question, and it kind of takes me back to starting out when somebody told me that lighting is key to becoming a good cinematographer. I think that's kind of one of the most important parts. So I think having a solid foundation in lighting and understanding all the variables and the physics of lighting enables me to be more efficient with my lighting. Especially for when your lighting is set up, an important part of that is being able to not paint yourself into a corner. You want to be able to as you're lighting, know that you're going to be able to turn around and do reverses at a relatively good clip. So I think that's highly important, especially in television. Depending on what the feature is you're doing, you can be afforded more opportunity to not worry about that so much. But certainly in television, I think for that, you have to have an awareness that when you're lighting, you have to be able to turn around rather quickly. So I think that's part of it. I also think because I was a gaffer, I have a really strong knowledge of Kelvin temperature, color contrast, exposure values. Those are things that I developed early on. I think growing up lighting film also gave me a practical experience in implementing lighting more effectively. And I was always very good about lighting exposure and whatnot. So I had what do I want to say? I felt like I had a confidence in that. I think also working as not only as a gaffer, but just thinking about this, working as a set lighting technician, as a best boy, as a grip. Like in Denver, I got to do a lot of things. I wasn't just pigeonholed into one. I think all those things are important when you become a cinematographer. And the reason for that is because when you're on set and some change occurs and you need to make a decision on the fly, as a gaffer, I have the experience to know what it would take to and how much time it would take if I were to make a change. And so I can make a more informed decision with my gaffer and my key grip in that regard, because I already know, like when I'm going to go to them and say, hey, the director really would rather look this way and do this, then the other, how long will it take to get everything switched around to there? I already know all that. And so I can easily either make a decision that, yes, I want to do it, or no, I don't.
Now, as far as your pre-production process, how do you approach pre-production?
I think it starts for me with, I'll start at the very beginning, reading the script and letting my mind's eye take me where I want it to take me. I try to just like read it and have an open mind. And when I see things a certain way, I'll jot these notes down and write on the script. I'll just like make notes for myself and to let this guide me later on. So that's kind of like how it starts, especially when I haven't even talked to the director yet. Like I'll have these notes, and then when I am going to interview with the director, I can pitch a lot of the things or talk about the things that I saw in my mind's eye. So that's like usually important. I think from there, once I'm working with the director, I spend a lot of time listening to the director, discussing their vision. Again, I'll start referring to my script notes. I like to pull images that come to my mind that I want to share, that I think will invoke what the vision is we're looking for. Oftentimes also, I think the director will have a lookbook that her and the production designer have created. And I think that's always a good baseline. And that's really, we start to build this visual style that we want to achieve. And we create this dialogue back and forth in regards to that. Then the other important thing is we really want to discuss the camera language of what this project wants to be. And by that, I mean like the particulars, like, when we're looking at this particular character, I always want to maybe be a little above eye level or a little off axis. Maybe want to be in these particular scenes, we're going to go handheld, or we're going to always make sure we're dolling in a certain way. Those kinds of things. What's the language of the cameras, so we can start fleshing that out. That's usually important. My role also includes location scouting. I help determine really what the best location is for our needs. I work closely with the director on the blocking and shot listing. I'll basically create a plan and communicate with all the other departments. I use Artemis and Shot Designer. And I also make a point to work with my gaffer and my key grip and make sure that they have everything that they're going to need. We go through the one-liner, make sure that we're all on the same page, literally. I'll collaborate with them on the plans for the rigs, any of the lighting design that we're doing ahead of time. If the time doesn't allow for that, what I'll do is just really give them my vision as much as I can and as detailed as I can so they can hit the ground running and create it on their own. Basically, after I gather all these variables, I upload them onto a Google Drive so anybody in the production can access them and have the ability to know what we're going to be doing. So there are, like, for me, it's all about good communication in that regard. And then lastly, and hugely important, is, of course, working on what the lenses and the filtration are going to be for this particular show. So usually sometime during prep, we'll do a camera test, and I'll share the outcome of that with the director and anybody else who is interested, and we'll make our decisions accordingly.
Amazing. Amazing. Yeah, I love that nuanced approach of, whenever you're looking at a character, maybe the camera's a little off axis. I love that.
And well, that's when it really gets fun. It's
absolutely
all those little bits and pieces. And, certainly sometimes I think, and I'm just guessing that clearly the audience, it's a very subliminal thing. The audience, the audiences don't go, oh, wait, it's subliminal. And that's kind of the beauty of it. They don't really know what's going on, but it's invoking a certain something because of the way it was shot.
Absolutely. It's like you're not taking the audience for granted. You're putting yourself in the audience and saying, okay, this is how they're going to see it.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Excellent. Now, could you also explain your post-production process? Do you have much, input in the post-production process?
Yes and no. So I think for me, first I'll say this, like if I wasn't a cinematographer and on this end, my second favorite thing would probably be editing. I really love it. I'm very intrigued. I love to visit the editing room when I can and if it's possible. But usually here's how it works. I'll certainly stay in touch with the director and the editor, and they know they can get in touch with me if they need me for anything whatsoever. I certainly stay heavily involved with the color grading and the final color grading. If I'm busy or if I'm on another project or certainly on a TV series where they're already color grading, I'll do a virtual color grading session. My preference is always to be in the color grading suite with the colorist and the director to create the finished look. So that's what I try to do whenever possible. So that's how I stay involved at the post end of things.
As far as working with the director, what is your ideal kind of collaboration process with them?
Well, let's see. I would first say I enjoy working with directors who are open to pitches. That I think that's like the first thing. I think when there's an embrace, when you can embrace like a collaborative process, and that is helpful. I like to bring a lot of ideas to the table. So I thrive in an environment where those ideas can flow. And so when I meet a director, it's a great feeling when you don't feel like you can't say, hey, I have an idea. I have a thought for this. When you're working with a director who's really open like that, I think, well, the first thing is it raises the bar in general, because when you're in this collaborative process, you are then in this mode where you're bouncing ideas off of each other, and one idea leads to another idea, which leads to another idea. And that's what raises that up. And it's like, oh my God, that's such a great idea. We created that together. It's a collective effort. And I think that's really important. So I think that's usually important. I think like a huge goal for me is to obviously click with the director and form a really solid team. I think we really want to make the reason for that is you want to make every day enjoyable and you want it to be as creative as possible. So I think you really I think when I'm working with directors who bring that to the table, and let me tell you, on prom dates, Kim was phenomenal. She's just was beautiful to work with. So I had all of that and then some.
Amazing. Yeah. In other interviews, that's always the biggest thing is that collaboration process. It has to be open, I've worked with other filmmakers, and whenever like you said, you're able to bounce those ideas off each other. Someone has an idea, the other person makes it a little bit better. The other person makes it even a little bit better. And it's at the end, it's just this amazing idea that you both came up with. So yeah, absolutely.
And that said, there are certainly plenty of times and you have to keep your ego in check, because there's plenty of times when I'll bounce an idea off somebody and somebody will say, I don't really like that idea. Fine. I never hurt if somebody says they don't want to do something or like particular idea. I'm totally fine with that. And I think there's also the times when a director has a very specific vision, and my goal is to accommodate that. So it kind of, you have to read the room and read the situation, and you get thrown in a variety of situations. But ultimately, that's what I would look for in working with a director, is somebody who is hugely collaborative.
Definitely. Now, speaking of prom dates, there are a lot of scenes that take place at night. How do you approach night scenes or night shoots? Are there any special considerations that you make?
Well, so speaking of prom dates specifically, we needed, I think for that particular show, we needed flexible and easily adjustable setups. And so what we had to do for, like, when I first showed up and we were scouting, I was looking at all the night work, like a traditional kind of hard backlight to sweep across the scene, like a backlight on a condor. That wouldn't be a good option. There was a variety of reasons for that, but that was just like not going to work out. And part of that was the schedule didn't allow for it. The time it would take to move a condor for the reverses, or there was like a lot of obstacles in the way. So we just had to come up with something different that would be more malleable and flexible. So my gaffer, Matt Nardone, and key grip Cash Costner built these great moon boxes onto a condor, onto the buckets, and loaded them up with sky panels. And this way we were able to suspend that over the set, like behind the actors. It was a softer light that could hit a nice large area. And then for coverage, I was able to just swing it around and move it around to this way or that way, and maybe move the condor base maybe 10, 15 feet if we had to, but it really was super efficient. So that's how I handled most of the night work on prom dates. I think you asked me about tackling night shoots and like some. So I would say I start by devising a lighting plan that one, of course, achieves the desired look. And then from that plan, I'll scale back if I have to because of the budget or physical constraints. Sometimes you can actually add more, but oftentimes it's like, oh, we have to take this and that off the plan. So it just kind of depends. Kind of an example of a scenario when we were shooting at Hannah's house at night, when there's the scene when Greg drives up and Greg drives up onto the lawn and he gets out, and then Jacob comes out and they have this consoling conversation. It's really a funny moment. We were faced with several challenges. The neighborhood had these huge trees everywhere, and and then the other part was some of the neighbors weren't really so excited that we were there. So we had kind of these two things going on. And I remember, early on in the scene, Jacob opens up the window. He's like up in the second floor. And I was like, okay, we got to find a place for the condor where I can hit everything and light him and get everything going. So when we were scouting, I had found this place that we felt would work well. Okay, we're fine. This will work. Well, like 3 days before we were scheduled to shoot there, we found out that the location manager wasn't able to get that condor placement approved. So I had to kind of capitulate. So what I did is I ran over to this house before call time. We were shooting somewhere else. And so before my call time, I went to the house. I sat where the actors were going to be sitting on the porch. I went up to the second floor. I looked around. I'm like, I see a little slice over in this opposite direction. I took photos. I saw like this driveway that I was like, the condor could go in there. Hopefully these people will be happy to have us there. And I took photos of everything. I circled them where I wanted the condor. I did have overhead maps that, from Google Maps. I took, circled that. There was one tree that needed some trimming. So I took a picture of that, circled that, sent that to the gaffer and the location manager, and we were able to get that approved. And that's ultimately what we did. So in the end, the only thing that really changed with that scene is Greg drove up from the opposite direction. Other than that, everything went really well.
Wow. Wow. And you said that was only a few hours before you actually shot the scene?
Well,
That you
no,
did?
it was like 3 days before.
Oh, 3 days. Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So yeah, that would have been hard the day out.
Yeah, I was going to say the day of, that is amazing.
And I'll also say this, that I think with today's cameras, the sensitivity that they have with all these digital cameras, I think when you're in the right location, like shooting on a city street in an urban environment, that really you can get away with just augmenting. You can really shoot oftentimes available light and then clean it up in the coverage. On another show I did, we had this scene that was like, they really were having it was a TV series, and they were really having a hard time trying to place it into the schedule. It wasn't a long scene, but it was something we had to get. And they like, Brad, can you please just go and see if we could just shoot this one corner at night with minimal? And so I did that. I said, yes, we'll go minimal. And so we showed up, and it was an urban street, but it still was pretty dark. And I was using Sony Venice cameras, which just like are amazing at night. And so I just took minimal lights. I think I had a couple of stereotubes, and we did the steady cam work. The scene came out really pretty, came out really nice. So I think it really depends, one, the look of what you're trying to achieve. Sometimes you have to really light something in a big way. Other times you can be really minimalistic. So I think that's kind of how I work on my night lighting and what I want to achieve.
As far as prom dates, it is a comedy. Do you find that comedy kind of requires a different, approach to the cinematography?
Yes, absolutely. And I'll say this about just as a cinematographer, that the first priority is to serve the story. I think that's really number one. You don't want the cinematography to overtake the story. You're trying to help tell the story. So I think that's the number one important thing. But I would say in comedy that there's a couple general rules of thumb, if you will. And one is that everything tends to play a little wider, especially if the actors are doing physical comedy. And I also think through the history of comedies that there's always this high key light kind of situation where you want to light it. You look at older comedies, almost like overlit, but the idea is you want to see the actor's face and see their expressions clear. And it's true, like you don't want to like underlight comedy because you want to see the expressions on people's faces and the actors' faces and what they're doing. But with today's technology, again, I think we can be really so much more creative with lighting. I think we can add textures to scenes that were maybe a little more difficult many years ago. We can use color contrast. We can make emotional scenes more dramatic. I don't think like a comedy has to overall be bright. So what I try to do is I try to understand when these techniques will or won't work. And the other thing too is I like to keep the lighting more real and grounded when possible, and certainly not worry about a high key lighting situation. Another important aspect I would say is giving the director and the actors as much shooting time as possible. I think that's a hugely important part for me. If my lighting setups are taking too long, then I'm actually doing a disservice to the production. I'm taking time away from their performances. So I always try to be cognizant and mindful of that. And then finally, I think an interesting part, this wasn't certainly prom dates, but I think there are times when this is really important. If you're doing a comedy where there's a lot of improv going on, I certainly think that there are times when like 3 cameras are really worthwhile doing. I think like having the coverage on both sides and the master at the same time opens the door for the director to have incredible flexibility in the edit. And so I think that's important to know when you can't do that. And I know sometimes DPs like to shy away from this because usually one angle suffers from a lighting standpoint, but I truly believe there are ways to make it work. And I think that your director will be thrilled and ecstatic when you can make that work in situations like that. And actually, the movie The Wedding Ringer, I did a lot of that just for that reason with Kevin Hart and Josh Gad. It was like really for the improv and the moments going on that the director really wanted to have the opportunity to use what they were doing. So I really made sure I was able to provide that.
Oh, wow. Wow. Do you find, in your previous work, have you implemented that quite a bit, or are directors usually very receptive to that idea?
Yeah, there are. So I've done it both in dramas and comedies. So on the series In the Dark, we had this scene that was like super intense and super emotional. And it was a huge scene. I think it was like, I want to say like 12, 13, 14 pages long. And it was like, how do we bite this all off and get our day done? And the director did not really want to shoot this, over the course of a couple days. So, and the actors were pretty much anchored. They largely are sitting on a couch in the living room. But it was, they get up. There was a little bit of movement going on, but I really felt strongly that we could make this happen. So I brought in 3 cameras. I had this really nice master shot that I was able to push in on, and then I was able to sneak the 2 cameras in. And was it like the most cinematic it could be? Probably not. But what it did is it gave the actors the opportunity to like really put out on their performances and not hold back. And both actors knew that we were getting it. So that helped them. And we like shot 12 pages in a day.
Wow. Yeah. I was going to say, oh yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say also the series Wilfred for FX. I did that series, and that I actually won an ASC award doing that show. That was a 3-camera show. We did that all the time.
It's amazing. I love that show. It was so funny. Yeah, I was going to say for, those dramatic scenes, I came up as an actor, and, those dramatic scenes as an actor can be very taxing on your body, your psyche, and, knowing that you're only going to have to do it, maybe a 5-6 takes, but, not over multiple days. That's so amazing.
Yeah. And ultimately, so that's a great example of you just saying that and feeling that way would put you as an actor in a different place, that knowing like, oh God, I got to do this like 6 more times the same way. I think that's like hugely important. I think you have to kind of know when that can't work. So, and also the thing too, is we didn't like shoot all 13 pages all at once. We broke it up into, sections. And so we do section 1 over and over again, the section 2. And then when there was movement, we would overlap those movements, and then it fell together rather nicely that way.
Now, going back to prom dates, did you find that there were any scenes that were more difficult to shoot than others?
Yes, the stripper scene is the one that stands out the most to me. And it's a really fun scene. The scene is where Hannah experiences this transformative moment. What happens is she finds refuge in this quiet room within this frat house that they're stuck in. And as she goes to exit, this whole group of guys comes flowing in and stops her from leaving. And the last person in is the stripper, who kind of just pushes her back down to this coffee table. And the stripper directs her performance towards Hannah. And ultimately what happens is this encounter leads to Hannah's pivotal aha moment when the stripper removes her top. And at that point, the scene strips into this surreal fantasy sequence, is I guess how I'll put it, where the camera circles around Hannah and the stripper, and the 2 of them are spinning in the opposite direction. So as this happens, all the light in the room fades away into darkness, and this golden radiant backlight appears, and this golden light glows on their faces, and the walls disappear and this floating symphony orchestra appears behind them. And this really heightens this dreamlike quality of this moment. And then the fantasy is abruptly ends when Hannah, she starts to feel ill and she stumbles and crashes into the glass table, and that bam, snaps right back to reality. So that's the scene that comes to mind. And I was really intrigued by the scene during my initial reading when I read the script. And I remember sitting and contemplating these various techniques to make this happen. I was like, what could we do here? I came up with this one idea. I sketched it all out. And I actually pitched it to Kim in my first interview with her. And believe it or not, that's ultimately exactly what we ended up doing.
Wow. Wow. And was there anything that you maybe wanted to do, but just couldn't quite pull off?
No, it came out like we planned it. So
excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Amazing. Well, now, if we could, we have a video that we're working on based on walk and talks, which is a niche kind of shot. But could you explain your process in capturing walk and talks in either TV or film?
Okay, so first off, I think this is a great subject. So I'm glad you guys are doing it, because every single DP faces the challenges of a walk and talk scene that sometimes can seem daunting due to a variety of circumstances. I would put the question, what considerations are made? I would put that first, though. And the reason for that is because it's really crucial to consider the scene's content and context and what the actor's dialogue is. I think that's going to inform us of whether we want to use a Steadicam or a handheld or dolly and move with the actors, rather than like a long lens where the actors are with the camera stationary and the actors grow on us. I think those are kind of the two basic approaches that most people, most DPs go by, right? When shooting these scenes. So I think for an emotional scene, I would prefer to be closer to the actors. I would probably use Steadicam, two Steadicams or a Steadicam and a dolly, and I might do a two-shot Steadicam that's head on, and then maybe a dolly side angle. Or if I have two Steadicams, I can do both of that. But I want to be closer focal length with them in a scene that's more emotional and be in there as opposed to being too far away. That's kind of how I would do that. Now, I think in contrast, a longer lens from a distance would work well for maybe either it's an exposition type of scene or a romantic scene where if you were on a nice long lens, you could create some beautiful bouquet in the background. I think you could also, and I think that lends itself to that kind of vibe. And I also think that you could also create a detached or reflective kind of look going more with a longer lens type of thing. So I would start with that. And then once I were to know if I'm going to either do close in with Steadicams and dollies or far away longer lens, that would determine how I were to go about with the lighting. And that's a whole other aspect that, of course, we have to tackle. So whether it's a day scene or a night scene, of course, those are the first determinations. I think if it's a daytime scene, I would consider the position of the sun in relationship to the actors, of course. And I think sometimes, like depending on what the situation, of course, I would strive to be at that location at precisely the right time. Sometimes the schedule doesn't allow for it, and you have to come up with other solutions. So I've certainly done work where the grips are flying overhead and walking with the actors. They might have a 12 by 12 diffusion overhead to make the sun look good on them. Hopefully the sun is backlighting them nicely and works well and falls together. So maybe you're either just walking a bounce or even sometimes a negative, depending on the situation. If it's night, then that's a whole other situation. And I think really, to be honest, I think with night work, I end up finding myself to be more relaxed with a big walk and talk because you're in full control. So I can not have to worry about the sun and not have to worry about the constraints of various aspects of that. So I think with night work, you can find ways to make it really interesting, whether that's hiding lights in certain doorways or through windows of shops or whatever it might be. You can, to give the actors some key lights for them to walk through. You might also have a big condor, a big light on a condor to help edge them and make the city street look prettier, do a wet down, that type of thing. So I think there are a variety of things you can do. Float lights with them. I even remember doing a scene where I had a balloon and had it on a doorway dolly, and I had it so like if I have the two people and here's my master shot, two shot, I'm doing this, and then I have the other angle, the over. I had the balloon kind of an angle up behind them. And what that did is then we were able to, I didn't have to worry about lighting the whole world there. It lit the world as we went along because we all moved collectively, and it created a really nice key light when the one actor turned towards the other actor that was facing the camera, the side angle. It created this really nice soft key, but still edged them for the head-on camera. So, it just depends how you want to tackle it. I think those are how you go about that.
And now, based on what you said, sometimes using a long lens and the camera maybe on sticks or a tripod, that can essentially be referred to as a walk and talk. The camera doesn't have to necessarily be moving with the actors.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think it just depends on, again, how you want to tackle it. The other thing too is sometimes you'll watch a show and you'll see that maybe the only shot is the two shot. And I think sometimes there's a place where it's like, that works really good. And I don't know, you'll never know if they shot the other coverage, but sometimes just that two shot works really well. It really just depends on the story you're trying to tell and the vibe you need to pull off in that particular moment, if you will.
Okay. Excellent. Now, this is just a question for myself. As a cinematographer, director of photography, do you have a favorite type of lens that you like to use?
A favorite type of lens?
Yeah, or whether that be old Cook lenses or Zeiss lenses. I know you said you like to use the Sony cameras. Zeiss's usually work pretty well with those.
So for me with lenses, I think that I want to not pigeonhole myself into anyone because I think they can all add a specific look to the particular show you're working on. So I would say, I have certainly lenses that I like. I particularly like the lights, Summilux C lenses, but I don't always use them. I love anamorphic lenses. So when I get the opportunity, when the time is right to use anamorphic lenses, I enjoy using anamorphic lenses. So I think it really just depends on the show I'm doing and what we're trying to do. On prom dates, I use the Sigma Cine Primes, which were just really beautiful. The color contrast was really nice on them. The skin tones were really nice. And I also use their classics, the Sigma Classic Primes for the opening, that flashback that's at the very beginning. And I really loved the look of that. They had this low contrast, kind of milky, subdued vibe. The colors they were really interesting. So, and that really helped with the vibe of the beginning of with the flashback scene. So it really kind of depends on what we're doing.
Excellent. Well, thank you for fielding that question. I like to ask that because, I talk to a lot of younger filmmakers and, a lot of them sometimes get so caught up in the big name brands and just like, I have to have this lens because they made it. But it, like you said, it kind of comes down to the project and what is going to work best for that project, what's going to help, the story.
Absolutely.
Well, to wrap up, Bradford, do you have any advice for anyone looking to become a cinematographer?
I absolutely do. I think it certainly all starts with maintaining a high work ethic, showing up on time. I'm always on set a half an hour early, and I can only speak to this as a gaffer. So if your path is as a gaffer, I would say that you're already working closely with the DP. So start paying attention. Start paying close attention to the conversations perhaps between the director and the DP and the actors, and start zoning in on that. Learn every single focal length closely, observe the blocking, during rehearsals. Begin to formulate in your mind how you would actually light the scene, how you would place the cameras and what focal lengths you would use and what the setups would be shot-wise. And even if it's not what they're doing, you could still, in your mind's eye, know if it works. And that's what I was doing all the time when I was a gaffer. I would go, I think I would light it like this. And I think I would do the shot from here and I would do the shot from there. And when I say that, there's no wrong or right. It's what works and what doesn't work in that particular moment. So you could come up with something that's different than what they're doing, but that doesn't mean it's wrong. But you start flexing those muscles and you start beginning to think in a different pattern, because part of being a DP is you have to understand cutting patterns. And you have to be able to, as a DP, a lot of times the director is relying on you to make sure that the scene will cut together. And you have to know that we really need this shot from over here in order for this to cut together, or we need to go to this focal length from this point to this point. If we go too minimal, it's going to feel like a jump cut. If we don't move the camera enough over here. So those are the muscles you have to begin flexing so you can begin to work your way up to a DP. And I think gaffers are in a really strong position to move up to a DP because so much on the set revolves around lighting. So it's really comes down to that. I think you have an understanding of how lighting is set efficiently and effectively works and how crucial it is. And again, how important it is to know you're not painting yourself into a corner with reverses. That's hugely important. So I think by honing these skills, you'll be well prepared to transition to a DP.
Well, Bradford, that's all we have for you today. Thank you so much for taking the time. It's been a pleasure speaking with you.
Thank you so much, Brandon. I enjoyed every minute of it.
Be sure to check out Prom Date, streaming now on Hulu. And if you're looking for more deep dives into the StudioBinder software or filmmaker interviews, be sure to like and subscribe to be notified when new videos are added. I'm Brandon with StudioBinder Academy. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.